Welcome to Duck Season Somewhere podcast. This episode is brought to you by the following sponsors. GetDucks.com, your proven source for the very best waterfowl hunting adventures. Argentina, Mexico, 6 whole continents worth. For 2 decades, we've delivered real duck hunts for real duck hunters. And USHuntList.com, because the next great hunt is closer than you think. Search our database of proven U.S. and Canadian outfits. Contact them directly with confidence. Boss Shot Shell's copper-plated bismuth tin alloy is the good old days again. Steel shot's come a long way in the past 30 years, but will never, ever perform like good old-fashioned lead. Say goodbye to all that gimmicky high recoil compensation science hype and hello to superior performance. Know your pattern. Take ethical shots, make clean kills. That is the boss way. The good old days are now. It really is duck season somewhere for 365 days per year. Duck season somewhere takes me year-round to worldwide destinations where I visit with the most interesting people. I'm your host, Ramsey Russell. Join me here to listen to those conversations. Welcome back to Duck Season Somewhere. It's a Sunday afternoon cold beer time with my buddy Bigwater and our friend Iron Grip, otherwise known as Ryan Bianchini. Good to have y'all here, man.
Man, it's good to be here.
Bigwater, what's up with you and this COVID stuff, man? Why? What the heck? This is a whole nother. Twice you done dodged a bullet so high?
Twice, Rams. I tell you what.
That's why I hit you up with that microwave before you walked in and squirt you off with some Clorox.
Ramsey, it's these youngins. We got
I
to
washed my hands 3 times since you've been in my house.
Yeah, I washed them more than that. Yeah, a guy at work, side by side working by him for the last, 3 or 4 days, a couple of weeks ago, and then he came down with it, and I was, I was real close proximity, so I just, instead of waiting the 2 weeks and quarantining, I just said to hell with it. Let's go get the test right now and let's see what this is all about, which, the media is so screwed up, Ramsey, you can't even get a true picture of what the test is like. Last time I had heard, I said, all right, now, when they do that swab, they hit your brain. They almost jiggle that stuff up in your jelly up there. They got to pull it out. Well, once the lady did that, it wasn't nothing to it. I was like, that's it? She goes, yeah, that's it. And I said, well, that wasn't bad at all. I was over here white knuckling the chair, getting ready to get it, get stopped. Hardly wasn't nothing to it. So anyway, the test came back. I did 2 tests. And the first one was the blood test, so I have not previously had it. And then the second one, the swab, came back about 72 hours later, which that's, about as good a turnaround as you can expect right now, and it was negative. So I'm all in the clear, but it was a close call because the
third time's the charm.
Yeah,
Bigwater. Third time's the charm.
It'll be
Don't
my
get
time.
exposed again.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of hoping that I might have said, well, you've got the antibodies. Maybe I'd already had it, but, I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Yeah, I don't know what to believe anymore. Ryan, Bigwater and I talked about you several weeks ago, his first time on here. We were talking about the time we went to Ohio.
Yep.
And you and Biggie there were flirting with that anti-hunter over there on the other side of the dove field.
I heard that one, yeah. I remember that story well.
Can't take Bigwater anywhere.
Yeah, she is, I saw her. She's now on Antifa. I saw her. She was marching down there.
I bet she is Antifa.
She's Antifa for sure.
What are your thoughts on all this mask and stuff you were saying as a safety supervisor, Ryan?
Yeah, just, the fact that having to, an employer forcing employees to wear masks arbitrarily is kind of what it is at this point without doing any type of air quality testing and knowing what contaminants you're protecting against. And, is there COVID in the air? Is there arsenic in the air? Whatever, the type of PPE that you're required to wear is dependent on what you're trying to protect against. So, Target telling all their employees to wear a mask and them putting it on and wearing it for 8 hours or 12 hours and breathing and getting all that condensation in it, and then going home and it gets moldy, and then they put the same mask on the next day, they're going to run into more problems at the end of all this than I think they realize. Just making people sick with just other ancillary issues.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to believe anymore. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. You need to wear a mask, you don't need to wear a mask. I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't wear a mask. I wash my hands religiously. I don't wear a mask, but flying, you have to wear a mask.
Mandatory, yeah. I think it makes some people feel better, and that's kind of the society we're in right now.
Feel good health care.
Yeah.
Biggie, what's the latest on the bluebill season coming up? I know. Now, folks, y'all look. I'm gonna tell y'all here in the state of Mississippi, bluebill hunting is a very, very minority sport.
Yeah.
Bigwater leads the charge.
Yeah, it is. Well, the sad thing is Ramsey is honestly, for the most for a lot of us, it's the most consistent gunning that we going to do are on these catfish ponds for these bluebills. And just when we thought 2020 couldn't get any worse with the COVID and with all this stuff going on with the riots and everything, then I find out that the scalp numbers being down, that they were going to modify the way I understood is there's going to be a modification on your number of bluebills that you can shoot. And it was supposed to be, I was under the assumption, I was prepared that there was going to be a decrease from the numbers on scalp. By the way, the limits have varied. A few years back you could shoot 2, then it went up to 4, settled in at 3 for the last 8 or 10 years. And so it's been all over the place, and I was prepared. I knew there was going to be a reduction in what we could shoot, but it was supposed to be, I'd read that the first 15 days of the season, only 1 bird. Okay, that's fine. And then the next 45 days, 2 birds. So I accepted that. That was the option that Mississippi Flyway had. And then I read our season bag limits released here a week or 2 ago in the state of Mississippi, and they had gone with just 1. And so I called over to the the office.
Is that the entire country?
No. It's just for this. It's just each state. The Mississippi Flyway. As far as I understand, the Mississippi Flyway, you can go with that hybrid option.
Which is what?
Which is 1 for 15 days or 2 for 45 days.
Oh.
But there's some discussion amongst the powers that be that in order to simplify things, and that's something they said that hunters had asked for, was a simplified
changes
bag
mid-season or whatever.
Yeah, they just opted to go with 1 for the entire season. So the bad thing is that that's when you can shoot 3 and you can take 5 guys and shoot 15 birds. That's a good hunt. You can't complain about that. That's a fine hunt.
I was thinking, yeah.
I mean, the reality is I would love to go shoot big ducks every day, but we just, we don't have that. I don't have that at my disposal to go shoot big ducks every day. There's places, here, look at what we've been into the last 2 years. We've had record back-to-back 100 to 500 year floods.
South Delta's been
your
terrible.
Camp, your camp.
Yep.
What's the timber loss going to be on your camp?
Who knows? Who knows?
At a minimum, ballpark.
Oh, half.
Half of your WRP timber that was planted is going to be gone.
Probably.
Because we haven't had the ability to shoot big ducks. So we've got to make, when you give them lemons, you make lemonade. So we've been shooting bluebills on ponds, and that's kind of what we like to do. And this, now that it's down to 1, it's not even worth going.
I'm no duck snob, and I like to shoot bluebills. They shoot. They're fun to shoot. They decoy. They come in. They're consistent. Like you say, average day in the South Delta, especially, you go out and 5 of you shoot 15 birds for a group bag. It ain't bad. And chances are you're going to shoot a canvas back or 5 and some shovelers or something else come in. It ain't going to be just scalp, Yeah. What do y'all shoot a lot of bands up there where you hunt?
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's the other reason. Yes, we do. Ryan was with me. I took Ryan a couple years ago. He came up, brought Riley up there, and all my neighbors shot a band that day. I would say over the 15 years, I started hunting the fish ponds 15 years ago, and I bet you over that 15-year period, we average a band a year or band and a half a year, not quite 2, but
on bluebills.
On just bluebills, yes, sir. Yes, sir. One year we killed 4 off the ponds. So it's a band a year.
I did the honest thing that year. I brought Riley. We went picking up ducks. He was 4 or 5, I think. We went. I said, "Come on, let's go pick up some of these ducks for these guys. They've been out here shooting. We got there late, and he picks one up. He holds it up like that, and he grabbed it by the feet. And I said, "Look on that bird's leg right there." He looked. He said, "What is that?" I said, "That's a band, man." I said, "That's." They put those on so they can see where the birds fly and everything. Told him all about it. And he goes, "Man," he goes, "So we get to keep it?" I said, "Well, we didn't. I know we didn't shoot any birds. All the birds we shot landed over here. This is over here where these other guys been shooting." And we brought it back and said, "One of y'all shot this bird."
Yeah.
We could have easily said, "Yeah, we picked up this bird that we killed."
Yeah, look at this.
Hey, it was slick as your head, Ramsey. It was ball. There wasn't a letter. My neighbor, I brought him. He hadn't duck hunted in 10 years, and he shot it. We didn't. And Ryan went and picked it up, and I cussed Ryan afterwards. I was like, "Ryan, that dude don't give a shit about duck hunting. Why didn't you keep that band?" But it was nothing. The material, the metal was just as slick as it could be.
Where do most of those bands come from in the Mississippi Delta?
Pool 19 in the great state of Illinois.
That's right.
Illinois.
Illinois, yes, sir.
Wow.
Yes, sir. They must
Right off the river. Huh?
right off the river, right off the big river. Mississippi
We shoot. I have not shot one, but clients shoot a lot of scaup bands in Obregon, Mexico, and I'll bet a half dozen to 12 a year. We pick up shooting canals, pass shooting bluebills, and every single one of them come from Montana.
Yeah.
Every one of them. Every one of
Are
them.
they not banning them in Canada, or they're
That I don't know.
Canada
I
ducks?
don't know. They're banning a lot of them in Montana somewhere. They sure are. And I've seen those bands that get just worn smooth off.
Look like that right
A client sent me a picture of a band the other day, a cinnamon teal down in Mexico, and it was odd. And I said, well, most of the cinnamon teal we shoot down in Obregon come from Utah. I mean, I'd say everyone I've heard a band recovery on came from Utah. I said, so it probably came from Utah, and I know a guy, he's got the entire North American database on his computer. Send it to me, I'll send it to him, and I sent the boy a picture of the band and told him what the number was. It was missing 2 digits because it's worn. He said, "That's a weird one. I don't think it came from Utah." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, it's a number 6 size band. They put size 4 and 5s on cinnamons, 4 on the females, 5 on the drakes." He said, "That's size number 6." And look at the picture, which I had totally not looked at. Leave it to a band expert.
Yeah.
It was overlapped. It wasn't flush. The ends were overlapping, and so it was a pintail band or a widgeon size band on a cinnamon teal. And he said that tells me that came from somewhere else that doesn't band a lot of teal.
Yeah.
Maybe Idaho, maybe Canada, maybe somewhere, and they didn't have a teal band.
They just put whatever.
And he said the only band I can get to correspond to it goes back to 1968, and I doubt very seriously that bird is that old. Oldest cinnamon teal on record is 10 years old, he told me. So that's a great mystery where that bird come from.
Wow.
Still a heck of a story, and the guy got him a band of cinnamon. I had a client one time sent me a picture of his taxidermy cinnamon teal. I talked to a group out of Texas yesterday. Number one reason people want to go to Mexico, shoot a cinnamon teal. I had a client one time send me a picture of a taxidermy bird that had a band. I go, "Man, you didn't tell me you had a band on that cinnamon teal you shot." And he goes, "I hate to say it, but I didn't know it until the taxidermy sent me a picture." And I said, "Where'd that band come from?" He goes, "Well, it was on the duck's foot." How do you not know? Good thing you somebody. Good, that's the one you sent to the taxidermist instead of throwing
left
it
it
away.
on there. Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's what I want to show you here, Ramsey. This is the coolest thing we ever shot on the fish ponds for a band.
Wow, black-bellied whistling duck. Where was he
Look
from?
at that band.
Old as can be. Well, it's got that tannic acid on it.
Look at that band.
Stained real bad. Do you know where he came from?
I do not. I don't really. I don't know. I know he was shot.
I bet he came from Louisiana.
He was shot on the world famous Black Democrat Duck Club.
World famous.
Black Democrat Duck Club in Morgan City, Mississippi.
Yeah.
A boy from Greenwood shot him, about 16 years old, And
You never know what you're going to kill on one of those ponds.
And it's, yeah.
Paul Link is banding a lot of those down in Louisiana, and there's I saved most of that conversation for another future podcast, but they're getting big. Their population is expanding.
Oh yeah,
big time.
Yeah.
They use nest boxes there at Willow Break and throughout the Mississippi Delta now since Hurricane Rita. We see a lot of them, and matter of fact, I was talking to Rod Haydale. And God, they got all kinds of duck calls down there now, but they've come out with a black-bellied whistling duck call because it's becoming a big sport now.
Yeah,
shooting those birds.
I see them traveling through Louisiana all the time. Yep.
How far north have they expanded their range presently?
I don't know. If anybody's listening, if y'all are from Tennessee or north of Mississippi, north of Arkansas,
I know they're in northeast
Illinois,
Arkansas. I know that.
Are they?
Yeah, they're all the way up there. I saw that last week on a Facebook video with some biologist up there did it, you know.
How far north do black-bellied whistling ducks breed, guys? If y'all see them north of Mississippi, north of Arkansas, holler at us. I'd like to know that. That's a $1 million question. Their population is doing well, very well.
Now, are they indigenous to North America?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They are.
I think of them as a coastal species, at least in the U.S.
Started
a
out in
coastal
Texas
species.
and northern Mexico.
Texas, Florida,
Yeah.
Louisiana. I'm sure they get out west, maybe around New Mexico in the southwest. I'm sure they do. And we see there's breeding populations down in South America. I think their southern terminus for the northern subspecies is probably around Guatemala because they're so-called endangered there. Are they endangered because of hunting? Doubtful. They're probably endangered because that's just their southern range.
They don't get as far south.
Which is why they're CITES. They're a CITES species. You cannot bring them back from Mexico without a CITES permit, which is just bizarre. But that's the way it is. And I was telling y'all pre-show, we were talking about this, how for years down in Argentina, up in northern Argentina, we were shooting black-bellied whistling ducks at times out in the marshes, and they were always doty looking. They were always just in a weird molt. That's weird because down in South America, most of those species have a continuous molt. It's like 12 months a year you can pick up a bird and it looks like a greenhead. You know what I'm saying? It looks like a wintering bird because they continuously molt year round. And but maybe because it's got some North American influence or something, I'm thinking. It's always just dull looking. I was going through my bird book, just reading up on them last year. I traveled with a Ducks of the World book, as you can imagine. And I realized there was a southern black-bellied whistling duck that had a gray mantle and a gray chest. It's a little bit different than ours. So you learn something every time.
Yeah. You don't end up looking the same, fully plumed out.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different. Yeah.
You know, your knowledge of the geography of birds is amazing, Ramsey. And I wanted to pick your brain a little bit.
Yeah.
And just show off.
I never did well in pop quizzes, Bigwater, but go ahead.
Huh? Well,
I couldn't shoot on pop quizzes.
let me throw you some softballs first off.
All right.
All right. So when it comes to the United States, how many states have you currently hunted in? Do you roughly?
Upper 30s. Upper 30s to 40. Yeah.
You
have to look through my list, but mid to high 30s probably.
All right. Let me ask you about some areas that I've been curious about, just kind of some off the beaten path stuff, and see what you kind of maybe expands people's horizons a little bit on where all you can hunt ducks in this great United States of ours. I hear you talk about Salt Lake City area and the Great Salt Lake a lot.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
it is. The Great Salt Lake marshes are some of the most amazing duck history and duck habitat and duck hunters I've ever been exposed to.
Utah, the sleeper, what's the word? Sleeperest state? Not sleeperest, but
it's a sleeper state.
It's a sleeper state?
Yeah. It's a. I think. Well, unless you know about it. I mean, if you know about it, you know the history. Jack Ray was on one of our previous episodes, talking about the history that stretches all the way back in the market gunning days, and back when there were still passenger pigeons. And Kankakee Swamp and all these just unbelievable places, when they were still market gunning canvasbacks on Chesapeake Bay, the shotgunners of the world, those world travelers even back then recognized the Great Salt Lake Basin as the Valhalla of wing shooting in the world.
Really?
And to this day, it's one of the most amazing places I've ever hunted in the United States. And I love to hunt all the different little nooks and crannies. Well, we're fixing to be empty nesters, and I mean, I never thought about leaving the state of Mississippi, but I would strongly consider moving to Utah.
You know, I got to looking at it, Ramsey. So if significant weather comes to Utah and pushes those birds out south, I started wondering is if they move south, they move into states like, you know, Nevada. I mean, well, maybe not Nevada, but Arizona, New Mexico. Can you touch on those areas a little bit?
You know, that's some area. That's a reason I've not hunted yet. Is New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. It's on the short list. It's Pacific Flyway. Utah's in the Pacific Flyway, and it's a major breeding area for a lot of their species. You know, I believe that if the Great Salt Lakes were to vanish or go the way of the Kankakee Swamp and disappear, it'd probably collapse the entire Pacific Flyway. It probably would tank. And but a lot of those birds go to California and further south. And you know, those desert areas, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, they're high on my list, but it's just going to take, and I've got associates over there that have invited me, and it's just going to take some time to go over there and hunt. I want to experience hunting in the desert like that. You know, Mexico's a desert. Where there's water, there's ducks.
Yeah. And not much pressure.
And probably not much pressure.
As much pressure.
Well, you know, it's like Steve Combs was on here several months ago, and duck hunting is just not a big thing. You've got such big game hunting opportunities there in that part of the world, and upland bird opportunities. Not many people duck hunt like they do here at home.
What about, have you got the Vermont Lake Champlain on your list?
Yeah.
Have you hunted that yet?
I have not. I have not hunted
the Northeast.
I have not hunted the Atlantic parts and the eastern parts of the Midwest. I scratched some of that off my list this year. You know, the only time I ever have been through that part of the world was on a cross-country bike ride 30 years ago. And
we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll wrap up talking about that. But yeah, we actually ferried across Lake Champlain, and I knew then, and talked to the ferry captain and everything else about the golden eyes and some of the birds they shoot up in that part of the world.
Finger Lakes
up in New York.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I was wondering about some of those Northeast states. About, you know, if you were going to knock New Jersey off.
Oh, that's going to happen this year. We're going to do I do these loops and kind of hunt with friends.
So you got that Mid-Atlantic on your target.
That's hard on the list, man. I believe this year we've been going up basically from Mississippi to Wyoming, Central Flyway, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, Missouri, on up into Canada. I doubt I may not go to Canada this year, but the northern tier. And this year, I've got a hankering. I've been talking to some people and basically leave Mississippi and go to Michigan. I've got an invite to hunt with some young friends up there that do layout boat hunting. You know, I've layout boat hunted, but I've really never done classic Great Lake layout boat hunts. We could tie that in with some goose hunting.
That's the pumpkin seed boats?
Pumpkin seed type little boats out there shooting long tails and things of that nature. But I'm kind of heading towards Michigan and probably going to stop by and pick up Indiana. I'd like to hunt some of the vestigial Kankakee Swamp. It's 1% left on some private land there in Indiana. Probably stop by and see some friends in Ohio. I've got an invite with several friends in New Jersey, New York. And, I don't know what, I haven't just studied them out and laid it out yet, day by day what we're going to do. But I can tell you we're going to run as far up into Vermont, New York, probably try to pick up Chesapeake Bay, which I've hunted before, Delaware, which I've hunted before, and the 19, 20, 21, 22 of December, Forrest and I are going to hunt. If we get drawn with swan tags, we're going to finish in North Carolina swan hunting, which I've hunted there before, but I want to hunt with some friends over there. Send his little hiney home because he's got honeydew stuff to do. You know, boy, I tell you what, you start getting serious about girls that cramp your style.
That's right.
He's coming home on the 19th of December, and I'm going to stay over and bear hunt. I'm going to bear hunt Hyde County this year, and then I'll come home for Christmas.
Bear hunt.
That's one of the better places in North America to black bear hunt, right?
Man, unbelievably, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got so many clients and friends out there that have talked about the bear hunting. I'm just going to hunt, you know, from a blind. I've got some clients over there that bear hunt with dogs, which that sounds fun. I mean, that's like old Faulkner type, big woods South, Mississippi bear hunting. Holt Collier and William Faulkner and all that bull. But man, look, they talk about getting up in them thickets, and it really sounds to me a lot more like a Mississippi hog hunt.
Yeah.
Only you're using a short barrel gun instead of a Bowie knife, because you're beating through dog hair thickets, and you're feet from that bear. Which that doesn't bother me. It's the getting there.
Yeah.
You better be in some kind of shape. Now the bear hunters I know back home are, one of them's a former linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he's still in good shape, and his boys are in good shape. I'm like, I don't know if I can hang with you on this. That sounds like work.
And this
fun.
is Hyde County?
Thicket brust.
Somewhere in North Carolina. We're gonna hunt in Hyde County. Yep.
Kill big bears there too.
That's what they say. They say the largest bears in North America come from North Carolina.
How much does a large bear weigh?
I don't quote me on this, but like I'm not a trophy hunter. I don't want to shoot a cub. I've shot bear before, and I'm not going to shoot a small bear. But man, you know, their threshold out there is 500 pounds.
That's a big bear.
600 pounds is a really like a world record type bear. I shot a great bear up in Saskatchewan 25 years ago. The one that tried to climb a tree with me, and it was a spring bear, and it was 375 pounds. It was a big bear, but he looked like Wilt Chamberlain.
He
wasn't big, he was just long, you know. And boy, I can't imagine a 500-pound bear.
So you anticipate a close encounter?
No, I anticipate racking one off in 300 mag and putting the crosshairs on them and touching it off. You know, yeah.
That's interesting.
Now, do they sit over bait there as well?
I think so. Yep.
Yeah.
I think so. I got invited to go out this past year to Washington State. They don't hunt over bait, but they got a lot of. Who knew they had a lot of bears in Washington State? You know, and it was. I got invited to go deer hunting, but he said the chances of you shooting a black bear better than 50%.
Really?
I'm like, man, dial me in. Yeah, I mean,
whitetail deer hunting there as well, or is that?
Whitetail deer.
Yeah.
Isn't that something that everybody I know that has bears in their backyard, North Carolina or Washington or wherever, they just kind of sort of, Alaska, they don't really bear hunt.
No.
Because it's a lot of work, it's just not something they're into, and they say it's delicious. I have eaten it, and it's good. And I tell them all, you know, man, if I lived somewhere I could shoot bear like y'all do, I'd have like an Elvis Presley green room, only it'd be bear hide instead of green shag carpet.
Right?
I mean, I'd shoot one every year.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, that's what in the old days, the pioneers would hunt bear for themselves to eat and hunt the venison to go back and sell. But
I don't know why it fascinates me about that black bear history, and it's just, you know, we've got a few here in Mississippi. You know, at one time when we got into willow break there in South Delta,
I remember that.
I never will forget old TJ Pennick. I'm up in Stuttgart doing something for somebody, and TJ called, and I could tell he'd had about a dozen beers.
Caught one?
Caught one in a hog trap. It said, how do I let him go? I said, how many beers you had? You know, don't open that cage door. And we called Fish and Wildlife, and they put a collar on him and weighed him.
Yeah.
And it was the heaviest weighing bear in the state of Mississippi at the time. It was ginormous.
Yeah.
Big old male.
Yeah.
And you know that for all the years, for 5 years after that date, it never left within a few miles of us. Went across the river, really over them big woods across the way. And 1 year, they climbed up a cypress tree, down in a hollow cypress tree, darted him while he was hibernating, and put a geo-tracking collar on him. And that bear ended up, gosh, man, this oldest lived bear in the state of Mississippi. He went from the biggest, they caught bigger, but he went to the longest lived bear in Mississippi. That bear ended up walking over toward Lake George Wildlife Management Area 4 or 5 years ago and died.
Wow.
How many years was it?
It had been over a decade after we caught him.
Yeah.
How old was he when you caught him?
I don't, no idea. No idea.
What is the lifespan of a bear?
In the 20s and 30s.
I bet what was it? It was like I'd say it was about 03, 04 or something.
Yeah, 02, 03,
I remember that, yeah. And it was already a full grown.
It was full grown, biggest bear in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
That stuff just fascinates me. And it's like I read a book recently about Colonel Bobo up in North Mississippi, for whom Bobo Brake was named after, and reputedly he, back in the days after the Civil War, turn of the century, he killed over 350 black bears in a single year in the state of Mississippi.
Yeah.
And the reading about those accounts of how those guys hunted, turned those dogs loose, packs and packs of dogs, and bust through cane thickets on horseback. I don't forget one graphic detail talking about a piece of cane went up his son's nose. Kind of like that swab you talking about on that coat. Him having to stop and pull it out and then giddy up and go after them dogs. I'm like, man, that's a tough son of a gun wanting a bear. I ain't into that.
No.
Yeah.
I wonder, it makes me think with the population expanding on them, like we talked about with the black bellies, but with black bear, in Louisiana, parts of Louisiana close to where my other family lives, there's already, they have to put locks on their garbage cans out when they put them out. And a friend of mine that I've talked to has pulled into his driveway at night at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night and seen 2 or 3 bears in his front yard.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, is there going to be one of these days?
One day there will be. I can remember several years after we caught that bear at Willowbreak, walking to a deer stand. It's just one particular stand. It's one of the closest stands we've got to camp, but it's a pretty long walk in, just down a trail. I never forget, it was raining, and I stopped, and right in the middle of the trail was a bear track. And that's the first and only time I've ever seen a black bear track in the mud in the state of Mississippi. And I remember those stories of my granddad talking about when they see a deer track back in the day, and everybody in the barbershop come down and look at it, and I'm thinking, golly, one of these days there could be a bunch.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've walked on the trail in Berwick and looked down and seen a bear track right there.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'd like to know one day we're going to have bears like they do in North Carolina to go hunt.
Yeah.
Well, we're heading that way.
Bring them on.
For sure, we're heading that way.
You ever been to Elvis Presley's house?
No, but I did stop in the one Elvis Presley, Graceland 2 out of Holly Springs, Mississippi with that guy. He just died a couple of years ago. Had Graceland 2. You know what I'm talking about? Is it
Jerry Lee Lewis?
No, some dude up there. I can't remember his name, but we were drunk. I don't mind that. But we went in there, and I remember everything in there was his whole house was a tribute to Elvis. Just Graceland 2 out of Holly Springs.
If you ever go through Memphis, and I think they do have concealed carry, you ought to be armed in that part of town anymore. Everybody ought to go through Graceland. It'll just blow your mind.
I tried to convince my wife to go where he was born.
The king of rock and roll had a smaller kitchen than mine.
That's right.
What? In Graceland?
Unbelievable. It's a big house, small kitchen. The swimming pool, it's the smallest swimming pool I've ever seen.
Really?
And it's a concrete pond. It wasn't not one of these fiberglass jobs, just concrete with a diving board.
Yeah.
And but he really did have a room. I think he called it the jungle room. It was wall to wall, ceiling and floor, green shag carpet. And that would be me if I could hunt black bear. It'd be all black bear hide.
That would be neat. That would be neat for sure. So we're going to go on from bears. I want to get back on the ducks for a minute. I want to ask you.
Hey, y'all brought the beer.
The 41 species or so roughly thereabout in North America. Waterfowl species, correct? In that neighborhood?
Yeah, no, I dispute that. It's a very, very dated resource. But back in the 40s, Frank Bell wrote Ducks, Geese, and Swans of North America. And to me, I recognize it as the go-to. Now, he does recognize you're raising widgeons and barnacle geese and a few other birds. But if you go through it to include speckled belly subspecies, let's just say there's 2, not 4, and the Canada goose subspecies. There's closer to 60s, and I really 40 all the different variations of 41 waterfowl that I've seen in North American, they really kind of make sense from a contest point because they're absolutely doable. But really and truly, so are most, not all, most of the North American species you can still lawfully hunt. Tule goose out in California, which is a subspecies of spec, that would be a reach. You know what bothers me about the 41? This. Most obvious thing, two most obvious things about a list of 41 ducks, geese, and swans, or waterfowl they call it. Number one, there's a sandhill crane on there. Now, the only people I know that actively hunt sandhill cranes are waterfowlers.
Waterfowlers, yeah.
Because you decoy them, you call them in, yada yada. But if you're going to put a sandhill crane, why not put a coot? Why not put a gallinule? It's not a duck or a goose or swan. That's the one thing. Second thing, it just bothers me. This is all personal. Never mind the fact I don't think it ought to be a contest because to me it's a personal quest of adventure seeking. But it bothers me that they've got a blue goose and a white goose that are the same thing, only different color morphs. Well, if you're going to count blue and white, why not have interphase, which is most of them are now because of the breeding range. But you do have the mid-continent population of snow geese, the lesser snow goose, and you've got the greater snow goose. You've got Atlantic brant, and you've got gray belly, and you've got Pacific brant, black belly. I mean, at least break it out like that. At least break, and even if you don't go to the whole 5 subspecies, I believe one of them may be farcical, of the eiders. At least break it out Pacific and American. Why would you take a shortcut? I mean, it's a quest. I'm going to interview a guy up in Sumner, Mississippi, former mayor of Sumner, which is one of 2 county seats in the free state of Tallahatchie County. And years ago, we were at a catfish flaught night. We were at a Rotary dinner at the country club there in Sumner. I bet you've been, Bigwater. And he got up and introduced me, guide duck hunts around the world, yada yada. We ate fried catfish, listened to DEA come in and talk about different stuff. You know how Rotary Club is, very interesting. And as I was leaving, this gentleman introduced himself and said, "Would you like to come see my waterfowl collection?" And I'm thinking to myself, very respectfully, I didn't know this guy from Adams, and I was thinking to myself, no. You know, green wing, wood duck, I mean, you know, Tallahatchie County. The catfish kind of smiled knowingly and said, "You ought to go over and take a look at it. You might be impressed." I said, "All right, I will." And he's going to give me a ride back to the lodge, so why not go? This little man had every single North American, every single subspecies and species of North American waterfowl that you could shoot back in the 60s. You could have blown me. The taxidermy left something to be desired. But even back in the 60s, this guy knew about all those different subspecies and went up. I mean, you know, to go now to Barrow, Alaska or somewhere crazy would be St. Paul Island. That'd be a daunting task.
Yep.
This guy was doing it back in the 60s. And there weren't guys and operators, just him and his brother-in-law were getting dropped off and they were going hunting.
This is a hardcore duck hunter in Sumner, Mississippi.
Stellar's eiders and all of them. Huh. It was on Atlantic. He knew the difference in Atlantic or American and Pacific common eiders back then. So why don't we break them out now? So that's where I stand. I mean, you know, man, I'm not a contest guy. You know, to me, as a duck hunter, I want to chase all them little nooks and crannies, the different states, the different flyways, the different species, the different life histories.
The experience.
Why am I going to limit myself?
Yeah.
How does when we talk about get ducks, the clients that you have, the guys that come hunt with you, how many guys what your average client, are they more interested in a volume shoot where they know they're going to get after them, or you've got, for every 10 people you get, how many are marking those How many species are there worldwide? Have you ever been asked that question?
Yeah, now we really get complicated because I believe I've got a friend that is very close to having photographed all of the major waterfowl species of the world, and
What number is that?
167
Species.
Yep, species. But then you've got subspecies. Like we're talking about, and I get baffled by the subs. When you look at Canada geese, for years I counted Canada, which are big, and cackler, which are small. There's 7 subspecies of Canadas and 4 subspecies of cacklers. But then when I go back to my Belrose book, I'm not carrying calipers. I'm not measuring bill length and tarsal length and things of that nature. But I know where I hunt. And you start looking at the primary migration corridors, I believe there are 2 Canada and cackler, 2 Canada goose subspecies that I know for a fact I haven't shot, and that would be, both of them are big Canadas. It would be the Pacific and the Dusky. And, given a chance to shoot one legally, I want to shoot them. I want to hunt them. And I'm really not even sure if you can hunt the Dusky anymore. But I'd be willing to take a test and do whatever I had to do to go and hunt one Dusky Canada goose. And I've seen them before, and they earned their name. I mean, it's just, you could lay them out, and they got just a very, very beautiful buff-colored, goldish sheen, just a tannish belly that sticks out more than any of them. They're dusky colored,
So what do you, most of your guys,
Oh,
how would you,
I
what's
don't
their
know.
range? That's
I
West Coast?
don't know. I think most of my clients, I would describe 100% of my client hunters as just duck hunters, and duck hunting is so subjective. Bigwater, there's guys that may not be collecting birds, but I know they take notes, and they can tell you the species. And I've got guys that collect birds that are out there duck hunting like I am. And I talk to a lot of younger guys now, and by younger, I mean in their 30s and 40s, that are avid collectors. And I'm convinced that in the next 20 years, they're going to be like old Ramsey, and they're going to say, I ain't really collecting birds. I'm collecting. They're experienced collectors. I would describe them all as experienced collectors. I can't answer that question.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. What would you rather do? A volume shoot, or would you rather go after targeting specific species? I think.
I'm with you on experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you can have a great time hunting a high volume system, but
Give me 6 boxes of shells and put me in a place that I can lawfully shoot them. And I'm not matriculating my numbers. I don't keep a log of body count. I'm a duck hunter. I'm gonna shoot them. But the older I get, put me in a big black Democrat duck club with 3 scalp, and to me, the ideal is more about 3 plays, 3 shots, 3 scalp. Play a perfect game. As a duck hunter, I'm just speaking to me personally, I want to play as close to perfect as I can. I'm all in. The decoys, the placement, the setup, the species, and just play as close to a perfect game as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where we're all get as we get a little older. I feel like,
It's a quality thing.
Yeah.
I remember us hunting back in the day where, if we couldn't get 50 days out of the 60-day season, it was terrible, right? Bad time. Now it's, is it going to be cold? Is it going to be sunny?
Yeah.
Cloudy or something. Yeah.
But you go when you can.
Yeah, that's it too.
You just go when you can.
Yep.
We're all working now. Times change.
We're gonna go to Canada or not?
I don't think so. I'm a duck hunter, so I'm optimistic. And the last I heard, the dates for Canada for non-essential travel is July 22nd. Now I'm hearing possibly August. I talked to an outfitter yesterday that he believes, and it just scares me, but he believes from what he's hearing that Canada may prohibit tourists until June 2021. And that's going to be catastrophic. It's going to be catastrophic to waterfowl guides, and it's really going to be, I think, a bad thing for me personally. I love to go to Canada, to anybody that wants to go to Canada, and it's just COVID. You know, I don't know, but we don't know. Right now, I'm sitting on August 1st. What are they going to let me do in August 1st? And you know, unlike my outfitting clients and my clients that go to outfitters in Canada, I'm flexible. Let me find out they're going to open it on October 17th and on October 14th. That white Chevrolet is going to be pointing north and slick back. But I don't know. I'm just taking it day by day like everything else. On the flip side is, you know, we had a real uptick in Mexico interest because right now, as we speak, several tourism drives Mexico, the 15th largest economy in the world. And with safety protocols in place right now in a lot of the major tourist ports, they are letting tourists come in without quarantine via commercial air and cruise ships. Work essential travel is crossing through the ground borders, but the ground borders are closed for non-essential travel. Talking to all of our outfitters and resources down there, we believe that Mexico is going to be fully open, business as normal, with mask or whatever protocols they've got in place within the month. So we're expecting, and I believe everybody is expecting, for Mexico to be full steam ahead this year. Canada's iffy. You know, the later, boy, with every little extension, their season opens September 1st. With every little extension, I think we're losing odds that it's going to be open for this fall.
All right, Ramsey, as the duck expert in this room, as the expert, for us guys sitting down here in America, if there's no hunting in Canada, tell us about what our season's going to be like.
If we get cold weather and the birds migrate, it could be good. You know, there's going to be a lot of hatchier birds that aren't shot in Canada. You know, John Devaney knows the numbers. He knows the numbers. And, you know, it makes no sense to me. It defies everything I think I see. But fewer ducks die now in prairie Canada than they did back in the 70s. And but with no harvest by American hunters, that means there's going to be 250,300 birds that didn't get shot this year that could make their way further south. We don't know. You know, I can tell you if it's 70 degrees on Christmas Day in Saskatchewan, it ain't gonna make a hill of beans difference.
Yeah.
And it's a warming trend.
So we're still in the same boat, weather.
It's all about the weather. You know, I think it is. But, you know, isn't it interesting to me, when you agree that for the past 2 to 3 years here in the Deep South, we've had a withering migration. I mean, it's been warm. And it's really showed, especially in the mallard harvest, I think, in Mississippi, didn't help with all that backwater flooding and just 500,000 acres of mud flat throughout the South Delta, which affects not only the South Delta, but all of Mississippi and surrounding areas.
Yeah.
But for the past 3 or 4 years, again, going to Mexico, boy, I tell you what, when that whole trend started and the southern duck season seemed to go to hell, it just shocked me to go down to Mazatlan, Obregon, Sonora, and shoot ducks. Teal, cinnamons, blue wings, green wings, shovelers, gadwalls, pintails, widgeons, which though not as many as peak time, a bunch. Photoperiod migrators. So many of our ducks just migrate on the calendar instead of major cold fronts. A lot of them will hold back, but wait on inclement weather, but a lot of them just come on with the front. So it's a $1 million question. What is going to happen? I don't know. You know, I don't know.
What does our farmer's almanac say? That's right.
Yeah.
I'll be out there hunting them regardless. I mean, but who knows?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many teal I saw in September in Saskatchewan. Still just hanging out there. So.
Oh yeah, the past few years, it just blows my mind about blue-winged teal. They really are one of my favorite species, but it blows my mind that migration is strung out from Mexico to Canada in September. It's like last few years I'll be up in Canada. You don't shoot blue-winged teal in grain fields or big bodies of water. You got to find those little bitty out of the way potholes.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind. I'll go up there and shoot a limit, 6 ducks or 8 ducks of blue wings, and Ian and the boys are shooting blue wings in Mississippi, and my buddies down in Texas and Louisiana are shooting limits of blue wings that have migrated. It just blows. I mean, that's literally continental.
Spaced out, yeah.
That just blows my mind.
It goes further than that. I was asking you earlier pre-show about some off-the-wall places, Ramsey, and those are our blue wings that show up in the northern portion of South America, right?
I believe so, yeah.
It wouldn't be,
Yeah, it made perfect sense. We do have that real remote place we have in northern Argentina. One of the most shocking things, right when you think you've seen and done it all, you walk into a lodge in remote Argentina and there's a blue-winged teal mounted on the mantle. And I'm like, what's a funny story?
Uh-huh.
And so we get to talking, like, yeah, we get a few of those.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's crazy. I said, do you ever see bands on them? A Neo. And I'm tapping my wrist like a band. He goes, no, we've never seen a band. Because, boy, if you had a band on one, you know it came where it came from. And that next morning, it was my first morning to ever hunt Rio Salado. It was amazing. Shot a bunch of ducks, but half the morning I spent just looking left or right at all the ducks as far as the human eye could see, just trading around. We shot a pile of ducks, and my bird boy's picking them all up. And I said something to him about a Neo. Or do you see any bands? Because I did shoot a ring-tail band down there one time in Uruguay, so I always just think to look for a piece of metal. And he goes, see? What?
No.
Really? Are you kidding? He goes, see? He starts digging through, picks up a ring-tail, a Neo ring. And, that was a disappointment. But I have had clients shoot blue-winged teal there. I had some clients from Florida, some very good friends, very good clients that were there year before last that shot some blue wings. Those beautiful blue wings.
They come out of Canada?
Well, my outfitter says, and I'm not disputing him. I am not disputing him. He says he believes there's a small breeding population of blue wings way up there in Formosa, up against the Brazilian border.
Okay.
He believes that. But if you look at migrations, and there are a lot of shorebirds, very small birds, and think about it, those shorebirds are coming through, migrating, same time the blue wings are coming through Mississippi, Louisiana. And those birds will start in the Arctic and go all the way down to, some of them down to Tierra del Fuego, and then come back in a single migration. Mm. So it makes sense that maybe some of those blue wings overflew a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if we ever kill one with a band, we'll know. We'll know. They don't band at all or count at all down in South America, but if we'd ever find a U.S. band on one, we would know.
What was the story though with your ringtail? Ringbill? What was it?
There's a ringtail, and I was asking him about a Neo, which is Spanish for ring. They don't call it band.
So it wasn't banded. It was a ringtail.
In Argentina that time, when I was hyped up about bands, and I asked my bird boy a Neo, he goes, see, and pulled out a ringtail.
Yeah, I got you.
But in Uruguay years ago, I did come across a banded ringed teal.
And what was the story behind it?
Picked it up out of the pile, and it didn't have avi, that had Cemave, C-E-M-A-V-E. And when I got back to the shop and got on the computer and Googled it in, it come up kind of like our Fish and Wildlife, like avis. And I waited till I got back home here to Mississippi and Google it and print off the form. And I don't understand Spanish, but I can kind of get by, And I couldn't get by. I'm like, this ain't no Spanish words I understand. So I printed off the form and went over to see somebody at the regional office there in Jackson, the Fish and Wildlife Service. And asked him, and he's like, I am. He said, wait a minute, hang on a second. And he ran down the hall and brought somebody with him and said, you know why we don't understand this? It's not Spanish, it's Portuguese. I go,
yeah.
really? Come out of Brazil. So we literally filled it in online and sent it off. And the biologist that had banded that bird in Brazil wrote me back and wanted me to know specifically where in Uruguay I'd shot it. I was the first hunter to ever report in 20 years
That's awesome.
one of his leg bands.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't keep it on a female. I had a pair of ringtail mounted and put it on a drake, but
What'd you do with that band?
just hanging at Willowbrook.
That's amazing. First hunter to ever report one of his bands.
From Brazil to Uruguay.
What's the point in banding birds if you don't have a hunting base to report them?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like that's going to be a
It doesn't sound like a very productive program.
What was the distance between where it was banded to where you?
1,500 miles, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, but it's interesting. It's interesting. And there are some parts of the world that's aggravating. Argentina, they don't band a lot of birds, but I do know hunters in Uruguay and Brazil. Oh, they don't have any hunting whatsoever in Brazil, but they used to. And I've talked to a lot of those Brazilian hunters, and a very few Argentines I know, like Diego Munoz. If anybody's ever killed a band, it'd be him, and he has, on the whistling ducks and the rosy bills. Because there's really no continental migration in South America, but they do move. They do shift for hundreds or 1,000 some odd miles. You know, I don't think of that bird coming out of Brazil as being migrational like from Canada to Louisiana, but they do move. They do disperse, looking for food resources. And so I find myself glancing and looking and kind of sort of hoping one day I'll find another Easter egg, you know.
That's neat. That's neat. Do they do any kind of other population studies?
No,
Like we have
they don't.
our
They don't.
fall flight index. They don't have nothing like that.
No,
Breeding
nobody else in the world does what North America does to count ducks and come up with population models. Nobody. Australia, Field and Game Australia is making a very good effort. They just started banding birds at one banding location, completely soft funds out of donations and stuff. They're trying very hard. You know, their government official will go out and do surveys, but because of the anti-hunters down there, it's subject to a lot of bias. You know, and it would be really, really good. In fact, I have talked to somebody here in the States about going down to Australia with me and trying to get them linked up and let those two brain powers talk about what it would entail to set up more of a formal survey so that the hunters in Australia could come up with some very good, credible American-type data to combat the anti-hunting politics with. Numbers don't lie. I mean, they do, but they don't.
No, that would make a lot of sense especially to help hunters. You know.
John Devaney and I were talking. You know, gosh, it just blows my mind. If I just absolutely was a sadist and just needed to have my teeth kicked in, I'd post pintail limits of Mexico on the internet, and it just incenses people. One of the craziest times I've ever been and I don't get a lot of that crazy talk on our social media channels, because if it's an anti-hunter, they get one chance to see my way, and then I just block them. It's just that simple. But you know, most of the people we have run interference with in social media are hunters.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I hope he's listening, but he ain't. You know, posted a picture. I don't know. It wasn't a crazy amount of pintails. It was, you know, limits 15 a day, 30 pintail drakes. We did good. We picked our ducks, man. We shot drakes only. Man, this guy just went ape shit, and just my page. He goes ape shit. Well, before I lambast him, I go and take a look at his profile, and his signature says, "It's all fun and game until the possum cop shows up." Which, you know, that don't really sound like a conservationist to me. So, but I write very intelligently, like I try to. 'Cause I'm not speaking to him. I'm speaking to anybody else reading about no-till farming and loss of small ephemeral wetlands up in Canada, and why since the 70s there's been a drastic pintail decline. And spent a lot of time writing that rebuttal. And then at the very end, I couldn't stand it. Before I posted, I put, and if you don't like that, that's the next possum cop you see. And man, he just went off. But I knew he'd read it, so I blocked him. I don't deal with it. But, you know, my point being, they do some surveys in Mexico, but they don't survey like we do. And but they do some surveys, but they don't. There's so little hunting pressure relative to America. I would guess, and I think people in the know like John would agree to some, you know, agree to some degree that there's probably more pintails at one a day shot in opening week in the Pacific Flyway than shot in Mexico in an entire year. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, it's so little hunting pressure. So, but you got to wonder. I have to wonder what does the future hold? What's Argentina and some of these countries going to be like 20, 30, 40 years down the road if they don't get off their pocketbook and begin to start counting and modeling and coming up with some idea of what they've got. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Ramsey, while I'm thinking about it here. When we talk about South America, and of course, when you talk about going down there, everybody talks about Argentina, but if there was one state or one country down there that you could get into, you know, maybe for whatever reason, does anything jump out at you?
No. I do want to just for my own edification go down to southern parts, Patagonia parts of Argentina, do a little kicking around duck hunting. Mostly when you get down there toward the tip of Argentina, you run into those flightless ducks, the steamer ducks, and things of that nature that are protected, and that wouldn't be fun. I'd like to see that part of the world. Parts of the world that I'm looking at hard right now would be more into northern Africa, clear up to Egypt. There's no ducks in Morocco. I'd like to go shoot the doves in Morocco. Heck, the truth of the matter is, I want to go to Morocco. You know, back on, what was that guy that wore the fedora and the bullwhip? Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. Indiana Jones.
You know, call me crazy. I want to walk through one of them open air hot markets and see some guy flute cobras coming up out of a basket, and then go do a little hunting. I'm talking to an outfitter in Central Africa right now. I've talked to some resources that kind of come and go. It's a little scary, but you know, one of the most compelling places to me right now is Egypt, and then south, because the Nile River runs north, going to the headwaters of the Nile River between the white and blue forks of the Nile River. There's a major wetland in Sudan. It goes into southern Sudan, which is getting pretty dicey. But Sudan would be a pretty cool place to go and hunt. And it's really interesting because what you have there, you have a lot of Eurasian species overlap with African species. And that would just be, to me, a real cool place to hunt.
Chance of a
I mean, you might shoot a Eurasian widgeon on one hand, then the next flight be something like a little pygmy goose.
Yeah.
You know, that would be a real cool place to hunt. I'm looking hard down in Southeast Asia, but there's so much humanity and there's so much politics. You know, we start sifting now. I've been invited to go to places in the world, and I have to ask real important questions. Now, I have to know, is the species endangered? Then I have to ask, is the species protected? Is hunting even legal? Is gun possession even legal? Can we get firearms if we can possess the guns? You know, I've been invited to the Bahamas. No, you can't possess a firearm there as a non-resident. You couldn't get ammo if you could. And the species I would be interested in hunting are strictly protected. What's the point?
Yeah.
That's not who we are.
No.
You know, I've been invited to go to Japan and I'm like, what? There's no hunting in Japan. There is, but there ain't. Philippines. They've got rice fields in Philippines with these Filipino ducks, which are one of the matterlike, 13, 14 matterlike ducks in the world. I'd love to hunt them. Guess what? They're endangered. No. Now, I do think one day I may get to a point I would personally love to go to the Philippines with a videographer and a duck call and no gun. You know, this year at convention, I got invited, a little nefarious, to go to Brazil. And the guy, kind of somebody, said he had a permit 4 days.
Wait, hold on. What is the deal in Brazil?
Hunting is prohibited, period, end of discussion.
Okay.
And, but supposedly he had government permits to come in. And
Depredation type permit?
Depredation permits to hunt during the rice season. There's a lot of parts of the world, even in parts of Argentina, that the birds behave a lot like they do in Mexico. Like it's so wild the way they plant wheat in Mexico in November and December, and then they gravity feed it with water. Well, that water's got to go somewhere, and it pools in the field, and then it starts to run off into these ephemeral wetlands. But when that water is coming over and those fields get muddy, those Mexican ducks land on the mud and walk right down those seed rows eating wheat. Then they fly to that where the water's collected to lay up during the day, and you'll shoot them, and they got wheat spilling out of their guts. And same way in Argentina, you've got a non-mechanized way of harvesting rice. When that rice starts to flag, it's very vulnerable. If they go and swath it before and then run a combine over it, it's very vulnerable to crop depredation. And they have depredation seasons there. Well, this guy invited me to come to Brazil, and I blew him off and said, "There's no hunting in Brazil. I'm not interested." And he said, No, senor, I've got the permits. I said, "Fax them to me. Don't worry about translating them. I got people that'll translate it just fine. Fax me the paperwork. And when I can read it and have it checked by a lawyer and government officials, the embassy, that it's perfectly legal, I'm on board. I'll come with you." I ain't seen it since. See what I'm saying? It's just real. You start getting too far off the beaten path. It just becomes very, a lot of gray area that I'm uncomfortable operating in.
Well, I like to look inside your brain and see what, all the kind of behind the scene Ramsey stuff that you talk about doing. Everybody wants to be Ramsey, but
everybody thinks they want to be Ramsey till it's time to do Ramsey shit. Like a time I went to Belize and no doubt saw the biggest flock of blue-winged teal I have ever laid eyes on.
What got you to Belize? How did you get hooked up? What was
Promise
your
of
lead on
ducks, an invite to come and scout a place.
How do you go about getting an invite? How does that happen? Somebody inboxes you, or what?
Yeah, somebody contacts me. I'm good, but I'm not God. And really and truly, as our reputation has grown, people find us. People find us. I've been invited, and we'll follow up one day when I can just lay it out on a map and just make a big spin. I've been invited to all those former those little bitty countries over in former Eastern Bloc Soviet Union along the Dunaj River.
All
I've been to Romania,
stands.
Huh?
All those are not Pakistan,
not the stands, but the Serbias and Croatias, the IA countries. I've been invited to all of them, and I think it's got possibility, not for great duck hunting, but for a nice duck hunting experience. Yeah, I'd like to go. I'd like to go look at that area, and it's possible it could be pretty decent, but we're all, they find us. So we got invited to go to Belize, and this was years ago. This may have been a decade or so ago. We show up, and I got to admit, it was kind of cool. It was about an hour out of the capital city you fly into, and it was out from the jungle. And
sits on the sea, right? Too?
Yeah, sits right on the sea. Man, it's got a real...
The Gulf. Is it the Gulf?
No, Pacific side, I believe. Well, it may be the Gulf, but I just know it's a Pacific side, but it's a real close coral reef. That's the hook and bullet of the fishing and the diving. We were off in the jungle. We were off in the boondocks. And that night, some locals came in. They were Belizean black. They were black, and they came in and introduced themselves. They were very nice. They were very informative. They seemed very knowledgeable. And the plan was we're going. And it was kind of a cool place. Just imagine sleeping at Gilligan's Hut.
Yeah,
that's kind of what the little place we were staying was fixed up as. It was very nice. I'll never forget that night. Somebody I was there kind of scouting with had brought a predator call. And he turned on one of them predator calls, and out of nowhere come a freaking... the lady that served stuff, the young girl that served stuff, had a butcher knife side of a machete, come shrieking out of the kitchen. I thought she was fixing to kill somebody. And stabbed the table with that knife and grabbed that machine and threw it down and started stomping on it. And she said, and just in real Jamaican type accent, started yelling at the guy, saying, "Have you lost your mind? There are cats in these woods that kill people.
Yeah.
You don't do that." Well, that kind of got my attention.
Jaguars?
Yeah, jaguars.
Yeah.
And so the plan was these guys were going to pick us up the next morning. And so I'm thinking before daylight, right? No, they showed up at 10:30. No guns, no nothing. We get in the boat, crank up, old beat up outboard. We start pushing across it. The motor dies. No problem, man. He starts push poling. I'm thinking we ought to be push poling back towards the truck because the motor's dead. No, we go the other way. And we get off in some low tide, stinking mud, shin deep, slogging through. It's hot. And we're slogging through mangrove. And I'm about to lose my temper. And about the time I hear like a jet taking off. You ever sat at the Memphis airport and them jets take off? That's what it sounded like. I look over my shoulder and there's 20,000 blue wings. So I'm thinking, okay, this may have been worth it. This is something. Well, come to find out, you dig deeper. You start peeling the layers off of it. You can't possess firearms in Belize. Every little village, there's 2 or 3 people that are market hunters that provide meat for the village. And they have guns. I never forget old Charlton. I got to know these guys. We went fishing. We had a really pretty good time. It was very, very big adventure for something that never panned out. And Charlton had a Sears and Roebuck over and under 22 long rifle over a 410. And
he's a killer.
about as loose as a sock, you know, it'd rock every which way. No sights whatsoever on that smooth barrel. He had a hose clamp with some surgical tube, and he pulled back like a slingshot and put it behind the hammer of his gun. I said, Charlton, with no offense, but you can't hit shit with that gun. I'm telling you right.
I'd have been afraid he shot you sitting in front of the boat.
No, they were good people. He goes, "No, man, I can hit anything." I said, "There ain't no way." I'm looking down at it. It's like if I'm looking down the stock, the gun is cocked to the left, you know. I'm looking down the side of the barrel. I'm like, there's no way you're going to shoot. He said, he gave me a tin canister. "Put it out there, man." I said, "How far go?" "How far you want." I laid out there about 25 yards. He cocked that hammer, pulled a rubber band back, cocked the hammer, shot, bing, pitched it down the road 10, put another bullet in it, bing, shot it down about enough, hit it at 40 yards. I go, all right, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. But he was explaining to me he was grandfathered in. They got to talking about when them boys weren't guiding or market hunting, they cut wood out in the jungle. Gosh, one of them jungle woods. I can't remember the name of it right now.
Make charcoal?
Huh?
Make charcoal?
No,
Like
the dark mahogany.
Mahogany?
They cut mahogany. And they all carried, like, one of them had a briefcase, one of them had like a little purse. They all had just whatever they had for their little field sack. Because they'd go to the jungle, man. They'd go off hunting for weeks. And everywhere you went, they had this little, like, old briefcase, just like a little old, you know, them little convention briefcases, just.
Little ditty bag.
I'd say, "Charles, what you got in there?" And he started taking stuff out. He had like monofilament for when they went fishing. Well, we're out there throwing rods and reels. They're hand lining. I'm like, "Man, you ain't gonna catch. You can't throw it no more than 2 foot." "Oh, mine, I'm gonna catch something." Boy, he outfished me. I'm gonna tell you, just hand lining. And then he showed me this powder. I said, "What's that powder for?" He goes, "Anti-snake venom." They began to talk about those fer-de-lance snakes, extremely venomous. We know around here we got cottonmouths and timber rattlers and copperheads, and they're all about 3 foot long. Fer-de-lance will get 3 foot long, but he'll get 7, 8 foot long. And one of the brothers was telling me, Charlton's little brother, who looked like a linebacker. He's much of a man. Looked like he'd been cutting mahogany wood his whole life. Showed me a scar on his leg. And he said when that snake hit him, it knocked him clear off his feet. Buddy, I watched while I was stepping there in Belize, I can tell. We were walking through the jungles and looking. And I saw my first jaguar tracks off there in the jungles. And I'm going to tell you, to reach down and put my hand on that jaguar track, it just it's kind of cool. and kind of like that bear track, you know. And I said, well, what do you do with this? He said, they put it in water and give it to you, and it makes you puke and makes you get diarrhea, and it makes you sweat. Whatever that was, I said, what's in there? He goes, just jungle herbs. And he said, you know, Ramsey, in this part of the world, we ain't got doctors. So his brother got bit by a fertile cutting wood, and said his legs swelled up so big it wouldn't fit in his pants. And all they knew to do, they were a mile from nowhere, was put it in a drink of water and give it to him, and he just started excreting out of every hole and pore on his body. But he lived alive the next day, so he lived. Still got a scar on his leg. There wasn't no duck hunting there. There is, but there's not because of regional and custom laws. You know, so that's kind of where when we start looking some of the far-flung places that we're continuing to look and discover, that's something we have to really dig into.
A lot of gray area.
It's a lot of gray, but you know, in my world there is no gray area. If I'm going to send a client somewhere, you got to be you got to be able to hold that gun, get the ammo, shoot the birds. It's got to be legal. There's no gray area. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where we are, scraping at straws right now.
Awesome.
That's a heck of a pop quiz you give, Bigwater.
Well, you know, and with all these places that you've been, let's talk about where you're getting ready to go now. How many? After you got burned, after that, you took a cross-country trek on a bike to raise money for the burn center, correct?
Yeah.
Thereabout. And you're going to relive some of that this summer, is that right?
Yes.
Here soon.
You know, it's 30 years ago this summer, 1990, I was 24 years old. Had my whole life in front of me. Now I'm a damn old man. And my college roommate and I, we couldn't be more polar opposites. He's a college wrestler from Rochester, New York. I'm a redneck from Mississippi. You know, been through a burn center, chicken legs, all that mess. And but we both bicycled. And we were roommates in college, and had a place out there east of campus. And we roomed together, and he got to tell me about this bike ride he was doing. I'm like, man, that sounds so much fun. I mean, we're going to start in Bar Harbor, Maine, and ride out to Washington State all the way to the Pacific Ocean out on bicycles. I'm like,
I see Forrest Gump.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but it's like kind of like that, and we did it, and we always talked back then. I mean, he got into landscape very similar to Forrest, and in fact, he's actually given Forrest a lot of advice. He was in the same program there at State. And we all stay in touch, but you know, we're just totally different people. And he doesn't hunt still. He's not anti-hunting, he just doesn't hunt. So we got to talking during all this COVID mess. And we'd always talk about doing a reunion ride one day when we were old men. And just off the cuff, I said, yeah, man, around 30 years, we need to go do that. Well, I had my math wrong. I was thinking I had 10 years or so to go ready and put it off, you know. He wrote back and said, hell yeah, let's go this summer. I'm not busy, you're not busy, let's do it. And I'm going to tell you, man, I'm like, all right. Well, I mean, number one, we ain't got time or inclination. I certainly don't have the legs anymore to ride 5,000 miles across America. But he lives in Denver, so I'm going to fly out to Denver next week. We're going to get in the truck, we're going to drive up through Wyoming and Montana. I've got a lot of clients, got a lot of friends, he's got a lot of friends. Instead of just riding all day every day, we're just going to ride to a spot, camp, stay in a hotel. And I told him, no, I ain't eating ramen noodles every night like we did when we were broke college kids. I'm eat a big meal in the morning and a proper meal at night. I ain't eating no ramen noodles and dry beans. Them days are over. I could eat a jar of peanut butter a day and be fine back in those days, not no more. And we're just going to go out and ride. And I think, but I got to say, man, you know, 30 years ago, who would have dreamed when I was 24, all I've done, all I've seen, let alone all this COVID bullshit. Who would have dreamed? And man, how the world has changed since February. How my personal and professional life is just kind of in a limbo. And I never forget, we're going up to Montana. We're going to start around Bowden. We got some friends. We're going to do some riding around Yellowstone. It's a little bit higher elevation than the Mississippi. So a little acclimation. I'm in shape enough to do this. I just need to get acclimated. But the highlight of our ride that summer was going over the Continental Divide. Everybody told us we should have ridden from west to east. We rode from east to west. We got lucky. We didn't have westerly prevailing winds. We caught a lot of good tailwinds that trip.
What altitude are we talking about here?
I don't know how big Logan Pass is, but I know that we're gonna about day 8, 9, 10. We're gonna stay somewhere around East Glacier. Get up the next morning. He's like, "Oh, it's no big deal, man. It's 15 miles." Well, I know better, man. I got GPS technology type stuff to look at on Google Maps. 35 miles to the top. It took me 3.5 hours when I was 24 years old to pedal up the top. Probably gonna take me longer this time. But you know, the more I got thinking about it, it's like, man, for a college wrestler and a fit guy like that to ride across the country on a bike, it was easy for him. But man, some of those mountain climbs we did, 4 hours, 5 hours. The further west you got, the slower the grade and the longer the climb got. I had to dig and find places. I had to find places I didn't know I had to make that climb. And I'm at the point now, 30 years later, not knowing what the next year or 2 or 5 is going to be post-COVID. I need to find that place. I feel like I need to find that place again. You know, and so I told him, I said, look, go up at the top, go hike, go do whatever, forget about me. I'll be up there when I get up there, but I'm gonna make that climb. And then we're gonna drop down and instead of going west, we're gonna go east, and we're gonna kind of head out through the head east of there. We got some friends we're gonna stay with in cabins and go fishing and do some stuff like that. But it's gonna be a 2-week bike ride. And I'm thinking about doing a podcast. I'll tell y'all this. Don't ask me why. This ain't my nature. But on the last night of that 60-day or whatever bike ride we did back in 1990, I was sitting at a picnic table somewhere, and I wrote myself a letter. Because I'm gonna tell you, after going through all that shit in the burn center, I just felt like I had these dragons on me. And when I completed that bike ride, I felt like I can remember thinking there is nothing that I can't do. If I set my mind to it, I can do it. And I don't know what compelled me, but I sat down one night over a little lantern, a little candle, and I wrote myself a letter. From Ramsey to future Ramsey. And I mailed it home. My mother opened it. And then she realized it wasn't to her, and she taped it back up. And when Kurt and I decided we were going to do this bike ride, I called her. I said, I know there's a needle in a haystack and a long shot. Any chance you can find that letter? And she goes, well, there's 2 places I can go look. And by God, she found that letter.
No kidding.
So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
remember what you wrote yourself?
No, I have no idea. 30 years ago. I can't remember what I had for lunch the day before yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm going to open it up. I'm going to open it up on top of Logan Pass and read it. Maybe do a podcast around it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like Ramsey before Get Ducks. You know what I'm saying? That's a whole different time and place. But I tell you, I do look back 30 years and I see where that adventure whet my appetite for kind of what all we've been talking about today.
So you've been riding the bike here lately, training for this?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But I mean, you know, I went to a bike shop to get smooth tires put on my 35-year-old mountain bike, and while they were, you know, picking out the tires, doing everything, I got to browsing around the bike shop. Man, let me tell you what, technology has changed in 30 years. I mean, my bike is a dinosaur.
Probably weighs about 4 times more than.
Oh my God! I could pick up those bikes with my pinky finger, and the gears have changed, and the brakes, and I'm like, man, of course, the price.
Yeah.
I'm still riding a $500 bike from 30-something years ago. The bike I rode across the country was a touring bike I put fenders on it, you know, and panniers, and man, like little saddlebags. No, man, these bikes today are state of the art. And I go out here biking out here in the country and get texts from my buddies, you know, people I know around the county. And it's kind of embarrassing because I'm out there pedaling and listening to podcasts and busting a hump, you know, ride a couple of hours, and I get passed by these biking folks that wear like the tights.
Yeah, you gonna
have purples
have
and pinks and long skinny helmet.
Yeah.
That ain't me, man. I'm out there wearing a visor and headphones and my khaki shorts and my shirt that, you know, kind of drip sweat better than cotton, and just enjoying life, man.
Sitting on a tractor seat on your bike.
Yeah, I mean, who knew there were so many bikers in Rankin County? I've had 4 of them pass me. Yesterday, some lady about my age, yeah, some little lady my age or older just come sweeping past me. About scared me, man. It interrupted my podcast.
You know, I tried Father's Day. I went up to see that weekend. I went to see my old man, and I was going to get a little exercise in, and he had a bike. I got on a bike for the first time in about 15 years. I ain't kidding you. And I said, well, I'm going to go ride for an hour. Because I walked for an hour. So I thought I could ride for an hour. About 15 minutes into that ride, my whole Yoda region down here was as numb as the North Pole. I mean, I was hurting so bad coming down my ham hocks here that I was like, my God almighty. And I gave up when I got off that bike. And that may be the last time I ever get on a bike again. I don't know what it is, but.
You know, I do a lot of, at the time when the water's off, this time of year, I take that old mountain bike over to camp. We've got 18, 19 miles of trails.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy because those deer and hogs, they don't hear you coming. They don't know what you are. They'll step out and cock their head like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
And you can ride. Matter of fact, Forrest killed a mid 160 class buck. I never forget the first time that thing jumped out on me. Scared me to death. He jumped out, and I scared him. He scared me. He stopped and looked at me. The minute he jumped back off the bush, I just saw the biggest deer on camp. Forrest went out there and killed it. And of course, you know, when you see them redneck members of ours driving around, they see me, they stop and give me the same look, like, what the heck is that on a bicycle? You know, I love to do that and have a good. But now, the first time I started doing that years ago, I had just a typical little bitty bicycle seat. And the first day I went riding, it felt good. The second day, I couldn't sit. I couldn't sit in a recliner. My butt hurt so bad.
Yeah.
So I went to the bike store and I said, you got any old lady seats? He go, what do you mean old? I want the biggest, paddedest, heaviest. Basically, I put a John Deere seat on my bike. That's not going to weigh as much as the bike does, but I sit in comfort. I'm fearless on that thing.
Well, most of the time I'm jealous of you, but I can assure you, as you're paddling up that hill, I'm not going to be jealous of you.
You know, the great thing about going up a hill is what motivates me is from the top, it's all downhill.
There you go.
Anyway, I'm glad y'all came over. I've enjoyed a couple of cold beers. And
I was glad to get Ryan Bianchini over here. I hadn't seen him. He's off all the time.
Good to see you, Iron Grip.
Between Morgan City and the Gulf.
Be here. Yeah.
And I told him, I said, why don't you surprise Ramsey and let's have a little gathering of the old school people here today.
Are you now going to leave here and be the official state of Mississippi bluebill lobbyist? I think you need to.
Houston Havens better watch out.
Hear that, Houston?
Yeah.
Hey, thank y'all for listening.
Enjoy
Duck
it, Ramsey.
season somewhere. We enjoyed it, and we'll see you soon.